The massive exploration ship hummed softly as it drifted through the dark regions of the Kepler 452 system. Jae-hwan Park sat in the main research station, his fingers moving quickly across the holographic display. Outside the reinforced windows, nothing but endless darkness stretched in all directions. This was supposed to be a routine archaeological survey, the kind of mission he had performed dozens of times before. A sudden alarm pierced the quiet of the research station. Red warning lights began to flash, casting an angry crimson glow across the metallic walls. Jae-hwan's hands froze mid-movement. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Gravitational anomaly detected, the ship's computer announced in its calm, emotionless voice. Warning. Structural integrity compromised. Jae-hwan's heart raced. He had studied countless anomalies during his 10-year career as an interstellar archaeologist, but nothing had ever felt like this. The ship began to shake. Small objects lifted from their secured positions, floating in the suddenly unstable environment. Emergency protocols activated. The computer continued. Prepare for potential space-time displacement. He reached for his communication device, but it was too late. A massive gravitational pull erupted from seemingly nowhere, dragging the entire research station into what could only be described as a violent tear in space. Jae-hwan felt his body being compressed, stretched, and twisted in ways that defied all known physical laws. The last thing he remembered was a blinding white light and the sound of twisting metal. When he finally regained consciousness, nothing made sense. The familiar environment of his research station was gone. Darkness surrounded him, not the peaceful darkness of space, but a thick, oppressive darkness that seemed to have weight and texture. His specialized exploration suit flickered with emergency lights, casting weak blue illumination around him. Jae-hwan took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He checked his suit's systems. Most were damaged or offline. The environmental readouts showed breathable atmosphere, which was both a relief and a concern. How could an unknown location have exactly the right atmospheric conditions for human survival? His hands moved carefully, activating the suit's backup communication systems. Nothing responded. No connection to his ship, no connection to any known communication network. He was completely isolated. The surfaces around him were unlike anything he had ever seen. Walls seemed to be made of a strange metallic substance that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Faint lines and patterns suggested advanced engineering, but of a type far beyond current human technology. Every surface seemed to pulse with a subtle, almost living energy. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding small and uncertain in the massive space. No response came. Slowly, carefully, Jae-hwan began to move. Each step created a soft echo that seemed to travel in multiple directions at once. His training kicked in, assessed the environment, gather information, stay calm. But nothing in his years of archaeological research could have prepared him for this moment. Something was watching him. He couldn't explain how he knew, but the sensation was unmistakable. Eyes, or something like eyes, were tracking his every movement from the darkness. This was no ordinary archaeological mission. This was something else entirely. As he took another step forward, a distant mechanical sound echoed through the darkness. It was neither a warning nor a greeting. It was something in between, a sound that suggested something ancient was slowly, carefully waking up. The walls seemed to breathe around Jae-hwan. Not literally, of course, but something about them felt alive in a way that defied simple explanation. Soft blue lines began to appear, tracing intricate patterns across the dark surfaces. These were not random marks. They moved with purpose, shifting and changing like complex circuit diagrams that rearranged themselves. His exploration suit's remaining systems flickered weakly. The emergency light cast a pale blue glow that revealed more of the strange environment. What had once been complete darkness now showed depth and complexity. Massive architectural structures stretched in impossible directions. Corridors twisted at angles that should have been mathematically impossible, yet here they were, existing right before his eyes. Jae-won's training as an archaeological researcher kicked in. He had explored ancient sites before, but nothing compared to this. Every movement felt like walking through a living machine that was slowly waking up from a very long sleep. A soft mechanical sound caught his attention. Something was moving in the distance. Not a creature, not exactly. It was more like a complex piece of machinery coming to life. Click, wire, pulse. The sound seemed to have a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. He activated the last functioning scanner on his suit. The device struggled, its screen flickering with static and broken images. Fragments of data appeared and disappeared. Temperature readings, energy signatures, spatial measurements. All of them made no sense. The numbers shifted and changed faster than his eyes could track. System diagnostic, Jae-won muttered to himself, tapping the side of his helmet. Nothing responded. Then he saw them. Small mechanical constructs began to emerge from the walls. They were not robots in any traditional sense. These were something else entirely. Each looked like a blend of living organism and advanced technology. Some were no larger than his hand, while others towered twice his height. They moved with a strange, fluid grace that suggested both mechanical precision and something almost organic. The smaller constructs seemed most interested in him. They moved in careful patterns, scanning him from multiple angles. Their surfaces shifted and changed color, reflecting light in ways that seemed to defy normal physics. Jae-won remained perfectly still. His archaeological training had taught him one crucial lesson. When encountering an unknown civilization, observation was the most important first step. One of the smaller constructs approached closer. It moved like water flowing across a surface. No sharp movements, just smooth, calculated motion. A series of blue lines appeared on its surface, the same type of lines that had been moving across the walls. These lines seemed to be some form of communication, a language both visual and mechanical. Jae-won's mind raced. This was far beyond any technological system humans had ever developed. These constructs were not just machines. They were something more complex, something that blurred the line between technology and life itself. The construct stopped exactly 3 meters from him. It rotated slowly, multiple lens-like structures focusing on different parts of his body. Then, unexpectedly, a holographic interface erupted from its central mass. Fragments of information danced in the air, complex mathematical equations, star charts, what looked like historical records. And then, most surprisingly, a series of symbols that Jae-won recognized. They were not alien. They were data fragments. Human data fragments. Something about this place was connected to human history, and that connection was far more complex than he could have ever imagined. A distant mechanical sound echoed through the massive structure. It was not a threat. It was more like a welcome. The holographic interface flickered to life, surrounding Jae-won with a web of information. At first, the data seemed chaotic. Streams of symbols, mathematical equations, and fragmented images dancing in the air around him. But slowly, patterns began to emerge. The mechanical construct watched him carefully, as if judging his ability to understand. A massive holographic display materialized, showing what looked like a historical record. Jae-won recognized this as more than just information. This was a comprehensive archival system of an alien civilization far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. The first images revealed a civilization called the Collective. They were not a single species, but a complex network of technological beings that had evolved beyond traditional biological limitations. Their history stretched across thousands of star systems, spanning millions of years. But this was not a story of exploration and discovery. This was a story of control. The Collective had a simple, terrifying philosophy. Technological and evolutionary potential was the only measure of a species' value. Those who did not meet their stringent standards were not destroyed. Something far worse happened to them. They built prisons, not ordinary prisons, but massive technological complexes designed to contain and study species they considered inferior. These were not just holding facilities. They were elaborate systems of observation, analysis, and potential reprogramming. Jae-won watched as images of different alien species appeared, beings with multiple limbs, creatures that looked like living crystals, entities that seemed to be made of pure energy. All imprisoned, all studied, all controlled. The collective's method was precise. They would capture entire populations, transport them to these massive prison complexes, and then systematically analyze every aspect of their existence. But something was different about the human records. The mechanical construct seemed to sense his increasing interest. It zoomed in on a specific set of historical records. Unlike the other species, human data was fragmented, incomplete, as if something had happened during the human imprisonment that the collective could not fully understand or record. The images showed human prisoners adapting to the prison's technological systems in ways no other species had. Where other civilizations had been quickly subdued, humans found ways to resist. They manipulated the prison's own technologies. They created unexpected solutions. They fought back not with physical strength, but with an incredible capacity for technological adaptation. One particular record caught Jae-won's attention. It showed a group of human prisoners who had managed to partially disable a section of the prison's control systems. The collective's record showed confusion, almost a sense of surprise. These humans were doing something unprecedented. The mechanical construct projected a final image. A massive technological network with human data points scattered throughout, not as prisoners, but as points of active resistance. They were not just surviving. They were changing the system from within. Jae-won understood now why he was here. This was not a random event. Something in this prison's history was calling out, waiting, wanting to be discovered. The walls around him pulsed with energy. The mechanical constructs continued their careful observation, and for the first time since his arrival, Jae-won felt something beyond fear and confusion. He felt a sense of connection. Something wanted him to understand. Something wanted him to know the truth about what had happened here, about what humans had accomplished in this place of technological imprisonment. The prison complex began to transform. What had once been a place of containment was now becoming something entirely different. Jae-won's interaction with the Guardian had triggered a massive change that went far beyond this single location. Data streams erupted from every surface. Massive amounts of information began to transmit, not just within the prison, but outward, across star systems, across technological networks that stretched beyond human understanding. The uprising protocol was no longer just a hidden system. It was becoming a beacon. Rescue teams would later describe what happened next as impossible. The entire prison complex began to reconfigure itself. Massive technological structures that had been frozen for centuries started to move. Energy pathways that had been dormant for millennia came to life. Jae-won's exploration suit was no longer just a piece of equipment. It had become a bridge between human potential and alien technology. The suit itself was transmitting data, not just information, but a comprehensive record of human adaptability, creativity, and resilience. The mechanical constructs that had followed him throughout his journey now moved with purpose. They were not just machines. They were carriers of a message about what humanity could truly accomplish. A massive energy field began to form around Jae-won. It was not a containment field. It was something else entirely. A transportation system that was reshaping itself based on human cognitive patterns. The prison was no longer a place of imprisonment. It was becoming a gateway. Holographic displays showed multiple historical moments, instances where humans had overcome impossible challenges, moments of innovation, of unexpected solutions, of finding hope in the most difficult circumstances. These were not just memories. They were a demonstration of human potential. The Guardian, which had been a symbol of technological control, now seemed to be helping Jae-won. Its massive systems were recalculating, reanalyzing, understanding that control was not about limitation. It was about potential. Rescue signals began to activate, but these were not typical communication systems. They were complex networks that had been carefully designed by the human prisoners who had been trapped here centuries ago. A final act of resistance, a way to ensure that their story would be told. Jae-hwan felt the prison complex lifting around him, not as a violent extraction, but as a careful, precise movement. The technological systems were learning, adapting, changing. When the rescue teams finally arrived, they found something unexpected. The prison complex was not destroyed. It was transformed. Massive technological structures that had been designed for containment were now something else entirely, a testament to human potential. Jae-hwan's exploration suit transmitted its final data package, not just a record of what had happened, but a comprehensive analysis of human capability, of the ability to find solutions in the most unexpected places. The implications were clear. Humanity was not just another species to be controlled or contained. They were a force of technological and creative potential that could transform even the most complex systems. As the rescue ship prepared to leave, the prison complex continued to change. What had once been a place of imprisonment was now a beacon of possibility, a message to the collective and to the universe. Humans would not be controlled. They would be understood. The circular chamber transformed around Jae-hwan. Holographic displays erupted from every surface, showing a complex historical record that no human had ever seen before. This was more than just information. This was a complete historical analysis of humanity's interaction with the collective. The first images were not what Jae-hwan expected. They showed human prisoners from different time periods, not just from one era, but spanning what seemed like centuries. Each group looked different. Different clothing, different technologies. But they shared something remarkable. Resistance. Where other species had quickly been subdued by the collective's advanced technologies, humans showed an unprecedented ability to adapt. The holographic records showed multiple instances of human prisoners finding ways to manipulate the prison's own systems. They did not fight with physical strength. They fought with intelligence, with creativity. One particular record caught Jae-hwan's attention. A group of humans from what looked like the mid-21st century had managed to hack into the prison's communication networks. They did not just send messages. They redirected entire system protocols. They created communication pathways that the collective had never anticipated. The mechanical constructs around him seemed to pulse with a sense of something. Respect. Confusion. It was hard to tell. Another image showed a different group of humans. These looked like they came from a later period. They had found ways to modify the prison's energy systems, where other species saw immovable technological barriers. These humans saw opportunities. They transformed limitation into possibility. The collective's records showed a growing sense of uncertainty. These humans were doing something unprecedented. They were not just surviving. They were changing the system from within. Jae-hwan watched as the records revealed more. Humans had a unique way of understanding technological systems. They did not approach problems with a single solution. They approached with multiple potential solutions. They were flexible, adaptive, unpredictable. One particularly interesting record showed a group of human prisoners who had completely redesigned a section of the prison's control systems. They had taken the collective's most advanced technologies and found ways to use them in completely unexpected ways. It was like watching someone rebuild a complex machine using only their understanding and creativity. The mechanical constructs moved closer. They were no longer just observing. They seemed to be comparing Jae-hwan to these historical records, measuring, analyzing. A final set of images revealed something shocking. In multiple prison complexes across different star systems, humans had shown the same pattern of behavior. They adapted. They resisted. They found ways to survive that defied all expected technological limitations. The collective's records showed a growing problem. Humans were not just prisoners. They were a variable that could not be fully controlled or predicted. Jae-hwan understood now why he was here. This was not a random event. Something in this prison's history was calling out, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be understood. The walls around him pulsed with energy. The mechanical constructs continued their careful observation, and for the first time, Jae-hwan realized that he was not just a prisoner or an observer. He was part of a much larger story. The prison's systems began to change around Jae-hwan in ways that defied logical explanation. His damaged exploration suit was no longer just a piece of equipment. It was becoming something more, a bridge between human ingenuity and alien technology. Soft blue lines started to emerge from the suit's surface, mirroring the patterns he had seen on the walls and mechanical constructs. These were not random marks. They were communication pathways, adaptive protocols that were forming in real time. The suit was learning, changing, responding to the complex environment around it. Jae-hwan watched in amazement as his suit's damaged computer systems began to rebuild themselves. Broken circuits reconnected, corrupted data streams reorganized. It was like watching a living organism repair itself, but with computational precision. The mechanical constructs moved closer. They were no longer just observing. They were actively participating in something unprecedented. Their lens-like structures focused on Jae-hwan's suit, capturing every minute change. A holographic interface erupted from the nearest construct. It showed multiple layers of technological analysis. Where most systems would show error messages and system failures, this interface revealed something else: adaptation, growth, transformation. Jae-hwan's background in archaeological research gave him a unique perspective. He was not just a passive observer. He was an active participant in a complex technological dialogue. Each movement he made, each interaction with the prison systems, created new pathways of understanding. The walls around him began to pulse with energy. Not in a threatening way. It was more like a conversation. The prison was not just a place of containment. It was a massive, living technological network that was slowly awakening. His suit's communication systems, which had been completely offline, suddenly flickered to life. But these were not ordinary communication signals. They were complex data streams that merged human technological understanding with the alien systems around him. Fragments of information began to appear: historical records, technological blueprints, communication protocols from species the collective had imprisoned over millennia. But these were not static records. They were dynamic, changing systems that responded to Jae-hwan's presence. The mechanical constructs moved in carefully synchronized patterns. They were not just machines. They were part of a complex technological ecosystem that was learning, growing, changing. And somehow, Jae-hwan was at the center of this transformation. His fingers moved across the suit's interface. Where before there had been only static and broken systems, now there were intricate data pathways. He was not just reading the prison's information. He was becoming part of its fundamental structure. A massive holographic display showed the progression. Human cognitive patterns were interfacing with the prison's technological systems in ways that had never been seen before. Where other species had been quickly subdued, humans were finding ways to communicate, to adapt, to transform. The mechanical constructs seemed to pulse with what almost felt like excitement. They were witnessing something extraordinary. A human was not just surviving within the prison systems. He was changing them from the inside. Jae-hwan realized he was part of something much larger than himself. This was not just about survival. This was about understanding, about finding connection in the most unexpected places. The prison systems continued to change, and at the center of it all was one human, slowly unraveling a mystery thousands of years in the making. Deep within the prison's core, something began to stir. Jae-hwan's interactions with the technological systems had triggered something unexpected. A hidden protocol, dormant for centuries, started to activate. The first signs were subtle. Tiny connections began to form between different sections of the massive prison complex. Energy pathways that had been inactive for generations slowly came to life. The mechanical constructs around Jae-hwan moved with increased purpose, as if responding to a long-forgotten command. A holographic display materialized, showing fragmented information. These were not just random data streams. This was a carefully designed system left behind by previous human prisoners. Each fragment was a piece of a much larger puzzle. Jae-hwan recognized the pattern immediately. This was not a typical technological system. This was a carefully crafted method of resistance. The human prisoners who had been trapped here had done more than just survive. They had prepared a way to fight back. The uprising protocol was complex. It was not about direct confrontation. Instead, it was a sophisticated method of technological subversion. The prisoners had found ways to slowly modify the prison's own systems. They had created hidden pathways, backdoor communication networks, ways to slowly undermine the collective's control. One section of the protocol caught Jae-hwan's attention. It showed how previous prisoners had managed to redirect the prison's energy systems. They had not destroyed the technology. They had repurposed it, transformed it, used the collective's own systems against them. The mechanical constructs moved closer. They were no longer just observing. They seemed to be actively participating in the protocol's activation. Lines of energy connected them, creating a complex network that pulsed with increasing intensity. Fragments of communication appeared. These were messages left behind by previous human prisoners. Coded information, survival strategies, methods of resistance that went far beyond simple survival. They had been planning, waiting, preparing for a moment of potential liberation. Jae-hwan understood now why he was here. This was not a random event. The uprising protocol had been waiting for someone who could understand its complex systems, someone who could complete what previous prisoners had started. The prison's core began to change. Dormant systems that had been offline for centuries slowly came to life. Energy pathways reconnected. Technological networks that had been frozen in time began to move and adapt. Each fragment of the protocol revealed a different aspect of resistance. Some showed how to redirect communication systems. Others demonstrated methods of slowly breaking down the collective's control mechanisms. It was a masterpiece of technological rebellion. The mechanical constructs around Jae-hwan seemed to pulse with what almost felt like anticipation. They were not just machines. They were part of a complex system that had been waiting for this moment. A final holographic display showed the ultimate purpose of the protocol. This was not just about escape. This was about sending a message that would reach beyond this single prison complex, a message that would show the collective that humanity could not be simply contained or controlled. Jae-hwan realized he was now part of something much larger than himself. He was the final piece of a plan that had been centuries in the making. A plan of resistance, a plan of hope. The uprising protocol continued to activate, and at its center was one human, about to change everything. The prison's core trembled. Something massive was awakening. Jae-hwan could feel the vibrations through every part of his exploration suit. The mechanical constructs that had been following him suddenly moved back, creating a wide circle. A massive shape began to form in the central chamber. It was not a living creature. It was not a machine. It was something in between. A sentinel designed to protect the collective's most important technological systems. The Guardian. Standing over 30 meters tall, the Guardian was a complex network of moving parts, energy streams, and computational systems. Its body shifted and changed, adapting to the environment with impossible speed. Thousands of lens-like structures focused on Jae-hwan, analyzing every detail of his existence. The first communication came as a wave of energy, not words, not sound, but a direct transmission of information that threatened to overwhelm Jae-hwan's mind. The Guardian was attempting to categorize him, to understand him, to determine his threat level. But something was different this time. Where previous species had been quickly subdued by such an analysis, Jae-hwan's mind responded. His exploration suit, now fully integrated with the prison systems, began to create a counter-response. He was not just receiving information. He was sending it back. The Guardian hesitated. Holographic displays erupted around the chamber, showing records of previous encounters. Other species had been quickly neutralized. contained, controlled. But the human records were different, incomplete, unpredictable. Jae-hwan understood now what made humans unique. It was not physical strength. It was not advanced technology. It was the ability to adapt, to find solutions in places where others saw only problems. The Guardian's computational systems began to show signs of confusion. Its analysis protocols, which had worked perfectly for thousands of years, were failing. Jae-hwan was doing something unprecedented. He was not fighting the Guardian. He was communicating with it. Fragments of human history began to flood the chamber. Not just historical records, but moments of human creativity. Instances where impossible challenges had been overcome through innovation, creativity, and unexpected thinking. The mechanical constructs around the chamber began to pulse with energy. They were no longer just observers. They were active participants in something extraordinary. The Guardian's massive form began to change. Its thousands of computational systems were recalculating, reanalyzing. For the first time in its existence, it was encountering a species that did not fit into its established categories. Jae-hwan stood at the center of the chamber. His exploration suit was now more than just equipment. It had become a bridge of communication, a living demonstration of human potential. The confrontation was not about physical conflict. It was about understanding, about showing that technological superiority was not just about power. It was about adaptation, about finding new ways of thinking. The Guardian's systems continued to shift, analyze, recalculate, and at the center of it all was one human, challenging everything the collective thought they knew about imprisonment and control. The prison complex was a maze of impossible geometries and shifting technologies. Jae-hwan moved carefully, each step calculated and precise. His exploration suit, though damaged, still provided critical protection and limited information. The mechanical constructs continued to watch him, but no longer seemed threatening. They were more like observers, waiting to see what he would do next. A series of energy barriers blocked his path. These were not simple walls. They were complex technological systems designed to prevent movement. Most species would have been stopped immediately, but Jae-hwan was not most people. His archaeological training had taught him more than just how to dig and research. It had taught him how to solve complex puzzles, how to understand systems from the inside out. He studied the energy barriers carefully. They pulsed with a rhythmic pattern, a pattern that suggested an underlying logic. Most would see a solid wall of energy. Jae-hwan saw a complex mathematical problem waiting to be solved. He began to map the barrier's frequency. His fingers moved across the damaged interface of his suit, collecting data. The mechanical constructs around him seemed to pulse with increased activity. They were watching, learning. The first barrier looked impossible to cross. Blue and red energy lines crisscrossed in a pattern that seemed random but wasn't. Jae-hwan recognized something familiar in the chaos. Mathematical sequences, computational patterns. This was a language, and he was beginning to understand it. His suit's damaged computer began to work in ways it never had before. Something about this environment was changing its fundamental systems. Lines of code that had been dormant began to activate. Adaptive protocols kicked in. With a series of careful movements, Jae-hwan began to interact with the barrier, not by fighting against it, but by understanding its internal structure. He was not trying to break through. He was trying to communicate. Suddenly, the energy barrier shifted. The red and blue lines began to move, creating a narrow pathway. It was as if the barrier itself was responding to his approach. The mechanical constructs around him hummed with what almost sounded like excitement. Beyond the first barrier, the environment changed. The walls became more transparent, revealing complex technological systems that seemed to breathe and pulse with life. Jae-hwan could see multiple layers of technological infrastructure, not just physical structures, but networks of energy and information that moved like living things. Another challenge awaited, a massive circular chamber filled with constantly moving mechanical parts. Platforms shifted, Energy streams moved in impossible patterns. This was more than a room. It was a complex technological puzzle. Jae-hwan took a deep breath. His archaeological training had prepared him for complex historical sites. But this was different. This was a living system that responded to his very presence. The mechanical constructs that had been following him began to arrange themselves in specific patterns. They were not just watching anymore. They were helping, guiding. Something in this prison wanted him to move forward. Something wanted him to understand. As he stepped into this circular chamber, the entire complex seemed to hold its breath. The next challenge was about to begin.